Hello, my pre-algebra students. This is Mr. Knight. This is 2.7, your 2.7 video. We're looking at decimal operations and equations using decimals. So let's go ahead and get started. So there are no vocabulary words, obviously, not on this video. So we have example 1. Oops, look at that. I forgot to nail that down. Let's lock this down. Sorry about that, guys. Lock in place. All right, so let's look at A real quick. It says find the sum of negative 1.7 plus negative 3.4. Well, that's pretty easy to do, right? So if we look at, just fill in the blanks here, use the rule for adding numbers with the same sign. So we're doing negative 1.7 and we're doing negative 3.4. Both the decimals are negative. I'm just going to use a symbol and not an actual word. Therefore, the sum is going to be negative. And then if I go ahead and add those two, remember what we're looking at right here is you remember the rules for integers. When the signs are the same, if you're adding, this is just adding, okay? Has nothing to do with multiplication or division. But if you're adding and the signs are the same, that means both are negative. You just add the two numbers and your answer takes on the exact same sign. Which in my example would be negative. If both the integers are positive, just add the two numbers and your answer is positive. If the signs are different, this is where the tricky part comes. You need to look at the larger absolute value. You take the sign of the larger absolute value, you get the difference, you subtract those two values, and then you use the sign of the larger absolute value. Another way to look at that is you look at which number falls on the number line, which one is furthest from 0, and that's the sign that you would use. That's just another way to look at it, okay? So anyway, if I go ahead and simplify this, I would have negative 5.1. So negative 1.7 plus a negative 3.4 is a negative 5.1. So now let's find when, in part B, this is where you have opposite signs, right? So it says first rewrite the difference as a sum. So basically you're converting the subtraction problem into an addition problem. And if you remember, you always have to change the sign of the number that follows that subtraction. Another way to look at this is I don't know if you've ever heard this term keep change or keep flip change. You keep the first number as is, you flip the sign or change the sign from subtraction to addition, and you change the number from negative to positive. A lot of people have actually used KFC. So some of you may be familiar with that restaurant, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So you keep the first number, change subtraction to addition, or flip the operation from subtraction to addition. And then the C part would be you change the sign of that value. Anyway, if we look at what that actually means with an example, we keep the negative 21.29, we change subtraction to addition, and it was a negative 34.62. Now it is a positive 34.62, okay? So then we use, now that we have an addition sign, we use the rule for adding numbers with different signs. All right, so we're going to subtract the negative 21.29, negative 21.29 from the 34.62. All right, so we know that 34.62, and if you notice, here's my absolute value symbols right here, is greater than the absolute value of negative 21.29. So the sum of the sign is going to be a positive, right? And so, so I'm using the sign of this 34.62. I'm using that sign because it has a larger, greater absolute value. So then if I go ahead and go back to my original problem, I know the difference between those two is 13.33. And I know that because I'm using the sign of that larger absolute value number, which is positive, therefore my answer is going to be positive. All right. So just to recap is the procedures for signs works just like the integers. When the signs are the same, you just add, this is addition, you just add the two numbers and use the same sign. If both numbers are negative, then your answer is negative. If both numbers are positive, then your answer is positive. When your signs are different, you need to get the difference or subtract these two numbers, these two values. Just put the larger one in front of the smaller one, if you will. Get the difference, and then you use the sign of the larger absolute value, right? So it works no different, even though these are actually decimals. So now, what I want you to do is to pause the video. You have two check points right here. You have number 1 and number 2, so work through both of those, and then once you've done that, start the video back up and we'll actually check our answers, okay? Okay, welcome back. So I am adding decimals, and if I notice I both have the same sign, they both have the same sign there. So all I'm going to do is add both of those numbers, and my answer takes on the exact same sign. It's negative 8.7. It's no different if you had negative 2 plus a negative 5, it would just be negative 7, right? Well, decimals work the exact same way. So now if we look at number 2, all right, let's look at number 2. I see that I am subtracting. I see that I have one negative, one positive, right? So what first thing I want to do is change this subtraction problem into an addition problem. And one of the reasons why we do that is it's so much easier to add than it is to subtract, all right? And especially it helps us with kind of keeping our notation for the sign of the numbers and so forth. So if I go ahead and convert the subtraction problem to an addition problem, this is what we'd actually have, 3.46. And just so you know, that right there, I could also write it like this. Right? The parentheses is not really needed. But anyway, if I go ahead and add those two, I have 10.58. And if I notice after I have converted this from subtraction to addition to a sum problem, both the signs of both these numbers are positive, therefore I know that my answer would be a positive, right? Okay, so it would actually be, I'm going to erase that. It would actually be 10.58, okay? So let's see, what's next here? Let's see if we have another problem. Yes, we have another problem, multiplying and dividing. All right, we'll be doing decimals here. So if we look at A, and again, the rules for multiplying and dividing decimals takes on the exact same rules for adding and subtracting. So just to recap, for integers, when you were multiplying or dividing, when the signs were the same, whether both numbers were positive or both numbers were negative, your answer was always a positive. When you were multiplying and dividing and the signs are different, the signs are opposite with both your numbers, then the answer is always negative, okay? So let's look at A. I see that I have a negative and I see that I have a positive, so I know that my answer is going to be a negative. If I go ahead and multiply those two, I would have negative 5.48, all right? So now if I look at the next one, it's multiplication. It's a negative times a negative, so I know that my sign will be a positive. And if I go ahead and multiply those, I would get 16.875, all right? So now if I look at C, so we did A, we did B, so let's look at C. C would be, if you look, you have a negative divided by a negative. So I know that, again, my answer is going to be positive. And then if I go ahead and divide those two, I would have 8.1. I already know it's positive. So now let's look at D. Let's get this last one here. We are dividing, and if you notice, it's a positive and a negative. Therefore, I know my answer is a negative. And if I go ahead and divide those two, I would have negative 9.5. All right. So now it's your turn. We've got two down here, two checkpoints. We have number 3 and number 4. So what I want you to do is pause the video, go ahead and perform these two operations. Watch out for the correct sign in your answer. Once you have an answer, start the video back up and we'll check our answers. All right, welcome back. So let's do number 3 here. A negative and a negative, I know my answer is positive, so now I can forget about the negatives, and if I go ahead and multiply those two together, you would get 16.52. All right, and then if I look at number 4, I see a positive, I see a negative, I know my answer's got to have a negative in it, and if I go ahead and divide those two, I would get to negative 2.05, or it'd be 2 500ths. Okay, so that takes care of those two. So let's see what's next. I have example 3. And I think we only have just a little bit more, all right? So example 3, we are solving addition, subtraction equations. So we have decimals here. So if I look at A, it's x plus 6.3 is equal to 4.8. So, and then we're going to get to B here in a minute. But for A, we start with the equation, all right? Now what we're going to do is subtract 6.3 from both sides, all right? 6.3 from both sides, 6.3 from both sides. And on the left-hand side there, the 6.3 subtract 6.3 gives me 0. X plus 0 is x. And then if I look on the right hand side here, I'm subtracting a larger number from a smaller number, therefore I know that I'm going to have a negative. It's going to be a negative 1.5, all right? So my answer for A would be negative 1.5. And then if I look at B, you have, we're going to add 5.74 to both sides. We're going to add 5.74 to both sides. One more time, 5.74, okay? And then I know on the left-hand side there, that will give me 0. Y plus 0 is still y. And then on the right-hand side there, if I go ahead and add these two, notice that one's positive, one's a negative. Get the difference between those two, which would be 2.23. Yeah, there's my decimal point there, 2.20. That's hard to see. I had to put a little bit lower maybe so you can see it. 2.23. And then I know that this is I use the sign of the larger absolute value, which is 5.74. It is positive. Therefore, I know my answer is going to be positive. All right. So that would be the answer for B. So it is your turn now. We've got 3 of them. You've got 5, 6, and 7. I need for you to pause the video, go ahead and work through all 3 of those. Once you find the answers, start the video back up, and we'll check our answers. All right, welcome back. So on this one right here, I'm going to subtract 5.6 from both sides. Okay, cancels on the left, gives me 0. Therefore, x is equal to 3.8. All right. So now if I look at the right-hand side here, or I'm sorry, number 6, we are going to subtract 1.2 from both sides. Okay. Gives me 0. They cancel on the right-hand side. That's 0. I'm left with just a y. So I have y is equal to 4.7. And they're both negative, so therefore my answer is negative. And then if I look at 7 over here, I'm going to add 5.3 to both sides, add 5.3 to both sides. On the left-hand side here, that gives me 0. You're left with just m, and m is equal to, get the difference between those because they're opposite signs, 1.9. That negative 7.2 has a large absolute value, therefore my answer has to be negative, okay? So I think we have one more slide here. Yes, example 4, that's our last slide, I believe. So solving multiplication division equations. So we're going to look at A, and then we got B over here. Did I even do B over there? I think I forgot to do B. My fault. Oh, no, I did do B. I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind here. Whoops, one too many. Okay, so let's look at A, right here. 0.8 or 8/10 m is equal to 4.8. So you start with your equation right here, and then you're going to divide both sides by 0.8 or 8/10, right? We're going to divide by 0.8 or 8/10. That equals 1. It's 0.8 divided by 0.8, which gives me 1. 1 times m gives me m. And then 4.8 divided by 8 would give me 6. Therefore, my answer in this case would be 6. Right? So now let's look at B. You have n divided by 5 is equal to negative 2.15. Right? I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. Multiply both sides by 5. 5's on the left will give me 1. They cancel each other. 1 times n is just n. And then 5 times that negative 2.15, that gives me 10.75, right? And then it's a negative and a positive, therefore my answer has to be negative. So it's negative 10.75, right? So let's go ahead and look at, you have 2 problems here. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. You have 2 problems here, the checkpoint. So you have number 8 and you have number 9. So go ahead and pause the video, run through both of those, and then once you finish, start the video back up and we'll check our answers, okay? All right, welcome back. So if we take this first one, we're going to divide both sides by 6. The 6's on the left-hand side will cancel. That gives me 1. 1 times x is just x. And then if I look on the right-hand side here, 43.2 divided by 6 would give me 7.2. And then you have a negative and you have a positive. Therefore, I know my answer is negative. So it's negative 7.2. And then if I look on the right-hand side here, I am going to have to rewrite this. This is number 9. So I have y divided by negative 3.1 is equal to negative 8.4. Okay. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3.1 times negative 3.1. Okay. I'll put parentheses around that. All right, so I know on the left-hand side that equals 1. 1 times y gives me y. And I have negative times a negative, therefore my answer is positive. 8.4 times 3.1 would give me 26.04, 26 and 400ths. So that would be the answer to number 9, okay? And I do believe that that was the last one. All right, so that's the last one there. So have an awesome day, have a beautiful day, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next video.